My wife wanted an open marriage after I helped her through her darkest days, then mocked me as uncaring, so I planned her perfect brutal downfall. About 5 months ago, my wife Sarah was formally diagnosed with severe depression. This wasn't a shocking revelation to me, as I had suspected for a while that my partner wasn't doing well mentally this year. She seemed to be deeply mourning the loss of both her ex-boyfriend and her best friend, two people who had once meant a great deal to her. For context, before Sarah and I started dating, she and her ex were in a serious long-term relationship. Out of nowhere, he cheated on her with her best friend, someone she considered like a sister. This betrayal cut her deeply, marking the end of two of her most important relationships at once. After that, Sarah stayed single for a long time, afraid to trust anyone else. She needed time to process the pain and sort through her emotions. By the time I met her, Sarah seemed to have made peace with the betrayal and was trying to move on. Still, the hurt lingered, making her cautious. We dated for 4 wonderful years, navigating our ups and downs, before deciding to get married. We had a beautiful wedding surrounded by friends, family, and the people who mattered most to us. The day was filled with joy and love. Initially, Sarah was an incredible partner, supportive, kind, understanding, and deeply caring. Marriage brought us even closer, and for years we built a life together that felt strong and promising. However, earlier this year, tragedy struck. Sarah's ex-boyfriend and her former best friend died together in a car accident. The news hit her hard. For years she had held on to resentment, but now, faced with their deaths, she was overwhelmed by grief she hadn't expected. Something inside her seemed to shatter completely. Sarah sometimes shared with me how she wished she'd been able to resolve things with them. She expressed remorse for not reconciling, forgiving them fully, or at least speaking her piece. Knowing they were gone forever without the chance for closure weighed heavily on her heart. I reassured her that it was okay to feel this way. After all, they had been an important part of her life. However, she started to blame herself for not mending things with them before they passed away. Sarah's best friend had reached out multiple times over the years, apologizing and trying to make amends, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to forgive her. I didn't blame her for this. It's not every day that your best friend sleeps with your partner. Even though the apology was there, the pain of the past was something Sarah couldn't set aside. I comforted her by repeatedly reminding her that what happened wasn't her fault and that she had every right to protect herself from further hurt. But no amount of reassurance seemed to help. Instead, Sarah's grief grew, spiraling into something darker and harder to manage. She would spend hours lying in bed, often losing entire days watching TV or staring blankly at the wall with a beer in hand. She began skipping work, calling in sick, or staying home without explanation. I could see her sinking deeper into despair. I tried my best to encourage her, suggesting small outings or anything that might help her feel better, even just a little, but my words fell on deaf ears. Due to her lack of motivation, she lost her job, and I became the primary breadwinner. Slowly, Sarah's behavior started to change in unsettling ways. Her mood became unpredictable, shifting between irritability and complete withdrawal. She grew distant and defensive, snapping at me over the smallest things. On top of not working, she stopped helping around the house. Household responsibilities piled up, and I found myself carrying the weight of daily life without her support, all while watching her drift further away. Even then, I still loved her and thought we could make it through this. However, things worsened. Sarah started picking fights with me if I stayed out too late, whether for work or to unwind with friends on a Friday. I'd come home to find her sitting on the couch, waiting for me. She'd ask multiple questions about why I was out so late and who I was spending time with. Even when I answered honestly, she'd hint that she didn't believe me, accusing me of possibly sleeping with coworkers or friends. Hearing these baseless accusations was both painful and offensive. No matter how I reassured her that I would never cheat, she didn't listen. As a result, we began having intense, exhausting arguments. She demanded that I come straight home after work and stay home on weekends, as if my time belonged to her alone. I started to feel suffocated, like the space I once had in our marriage was shrinking, replaced by her insecurities and anger. Things escalated when her frustration spilled over physically. There were 2 alarming instances where she crossed a line I never thought she would. In one argument, she punched the sofa just above my head in a fit of anger. a violent display that left me unsettled and wary. But the real breaking point came during another heated moment, when she slapped me across the face. That moment was a clear sign that her grief and depression had morphed into something darker and more dangerous. I realized I couldn't stay in a relationship where my safety and well-being were at risk. I packed my bags, ready to leave and protect myself. Seeing me prepared to walk out the door brought Sarah to a state of desperation. She pleaded with me to stay, promising over and over that she would change. I stood firm, telling her that for me to even consider staying, she would need to seek real help. She agreed, saying she would see a doctor if it meant saving our marriage. Reluctantly, I decided to give our relationship one last try, hoping she would commit to the help she clearly needed. It was a difficult decision filled with doubt, but I wanted to believe that the woman I had fallen in love with could still find her way back to herself and to us. This was when Sarah was diagnosed with severe depression. She started taking medication weekly and began meditating to manage her anger. Eventually, I could see some positive changes emerging. The medication seemed to stabilize her mood, and she made genuine efforts to be more present and helpful around the house. Little by little, I saw glimpses of the person she used to be, the woman I fell in love with, and it gave me hope. She showed more willingness to reconnect, and I felt a bit of relief that, with time, things might improve. However, a major issue remained unresolved: her reluctance to return to work and start earning money. She hadn't held a job since her diagnosis, and this became a source of ongoing tension between us. I didn't mind being the sole breadwinner, but I wanted her to at least try. Every time I brought it up, hoping to encourage her to consider part-time work or a role she could do from home, she pushed back, insisting she felt too low and weak to commit to any job. This disagreement eventually led to yelling matches. On one hand, I knew she was struggling, but on the other, the added financial strain and her refusal to explore options left me feeling frustrated and alone in carrying all the responsibilities. Last month, Sarah surprised me by suggesting we see a couples counselor. She shared that, given our ongoing relationship issues, she felt we should see someone who could help us communicate more effectively and work through our problems. She had already reached out to a counselor and made an appointment, so all I had to do was show up. I agreed, thinking the counselor could help strengthen our relationship and perhaps encourage Sarah to take steps toward rebuilding her life. However, I can honestly say that couples counseling made our relationship worse. During the sessions, Sarah admitted that a big part of her depression stemmed from the life we'd built together. She felt she hadn't been able to live the way she wanted since marriage brought so much responsibility. She also mentioned that she still missed her ex-boyfriend sometimes, and wished her best friend hadn't taken him from her. She said that, after the betrayal from her ex, she never really healed and felt like she had missed out on life. The more she shared, the more I felt like a bystander in my own marriage. She confessed that she felt she had rushed into marriage with me without taking the time to enjoy being single or exploring what she wanted for herself after her heartbreak. I was taken aback and reminded her that she had proposed to me, and we had dated for a long time before getting married, so how could she feel rushed? The counselor interrupted me, encouraging Sarah to continue speaking her truth, even if it hurt my feelings. Over the following sessions, Sarah confessed in front of the counselor that she wanted a redo of her single life. Since we were already married, she asked if I would consider allowing her to see other people while I stayed committed to our marriage. I scoffed, hoping it was a joke. However, she argued that she deserved to experience both her single and married life simultaneously, and that it was only fair for her to explore and find herself before it was too late. I was appalled by her suggestion and didn't hold back in letting her know how absurd and hurtful it was. I told her that her demand was outrageous and unacceptable. If she wanted to live like a single woman and explore, I could make that happen by leaving the marriage entirely. I wasn't about to stay in a relationship where I was expected to be loyal while she acted however she pleased with strangers. My words seemed to strike a nerve, and Sarah became furious. She shot back, claiming I could never understand her feelings because, unlike her, I'd been with multiple people before we got together. I calmly reminded her that I'd only had 2 previous relationships before her, both serious, meaningful commitments that simply hadn't worked out. It hurt that she would try to use my past against me, as if my experiences made me less entitled to expect commitment in our marriage. I told her that if she felt so strongly about living a single life, she should have thought about that before we walked down the aisle. I reminded her that I had made sacrifices for our relationship, especially this year. I had been the one holding down our home, supporting her financially and emotionally through her depression, all because I believed in our marriage and in her. But now, she was making unreasonable demands, as if she wanted the security and stability I provided without honoring the commitment that came with it. I told her firmly that she couldn't have it both ways. She needed to make a choice: a committed life with me or a single life without me. She couldn't keep me in limbo, expecting me to bend to her wishes while she kept one foot out the door. Since that confrontation in front of our counselor, Sarah has been sulking around the house, acting as if I'm the one being unreasonable. She's repeatedly tried to convince me that I'm too harsh and even selfish for refusing to let her have some fun. She keeps insisting that if I truly loved her, I'd be more open-minded and supportive of her desire to explore. Her attempts to guilt me into agreeing make it clear that she still doesn't understand, or refuses to understand, how disrespectful and unfair her request is. But I'm standing firm. I've tried to be compassionate, understanding, and supportive through the ups and downs of her depression. But there are boundaries I won't compromise on. I don't believe that being open-minded means sacrificing my self-respect and the integrity of our marriage. I refuse to let her manipulate me into thinking I'm the one in the wrong. So, am I the asshole for refusing to let my wife see other people while we're still married? For everyone wondering if Sarah might already be cheating and using this as a way to justify her behavior, I honestly don't think that's the case. My wife barely leaves the house. She's constantly around, either watching TV all day or idling in her own thoughts. Ironically, if she were having an affair, I'd at least have clarity and a straightforward reason to walk away. Yes, it would hurt, but at least I'd know she could move on without me. Instead, I'm left dealing with this painful and confusing situation. As for why Sarah's ex and her best friend's deaths affected her so much all of a sudden, I'm none the wiser. I'm guessing it might have given her a reality check. These were people she knew well, and maybe losing them so unexpectedly made her spiral. I've never fully understood why it hit her so hard, or why she thinks destroying our marriage and sleeping around will somehow fix her depression. As one commenter pointed out, maybe Sarah has never truly loved me throughout our marriage. Maybe she saw me as a safety net, reliable and loyal after her relationship with her ex, and she liked that. Maybe she still has unresolved feelings for her ex, and now regrets not giving things a chance with him. Whatever the case, it's ridiculous that my wife now wants an open relationship, something I never would have expected, as I'm deeply committed to monogamy. If she had ever hinted at wanting this kind of arrangement before, I would never have married her in the first place. This sudden shift feels like a complete betrayal of the life and values we built together. The reason I haven't already left her is that I genuinely worry about her mental health. She has been my partner for so long, and for years it felt like it was just her and me against the world. She was never this mean or selfish. She never raised a hand to me or yelled at me. When she began to change so drastically after the tragic accident involving her ex-boyfriend and best friend, I told myself it was just a phase and that she would find her way back in time. I wanted to believe that the woman I fell in love with was still there, just buried under all the grief and pain. But now, after everything that's happened, I've finally accepted that it's time for me to choose myself. This marriage has clearly come to an end. I've taken the next step for myself and reached out to a lawyer in private to start the divorce process. Sarah and I own our house together, and we have a joint account, but given that she's still unemployed, the financial situation is already strained. I needed to secure my assets before moving forward with the divorce papers. Once the lawyer told me everything was finalized, I was preparing to break the news to her. Then, yesterday, Sarah crossed a line I simply couldn't ignore, and I realized I couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer. We were at Sarah's sister's house for a family lunch. Her family is incredibly kind to me, and we've always had a good relationship, so I was looking forward to seeing them. For context, her family knows we've been having issues in our marriage, but no one knows the whole story. During lunch, I noticed Sarah was continuously drinking. She's been strongly discouraged from drinking because of her medications for depression, so seeing her with a glass of whiskey immediately raised red flags. When I gently tried to talk to her about it, she scoffed, ignored me, and went back to drinking. I felt disrespected, so I let her do what she wanted later during the meal, as everyone was chatting about their lives. Sarah's mother asked how things were going between us and how my work was. I mentioned that we had been going to couples counseling and that Sarah still needed to work through her issues. I then continued talking about my work when Sarah interrupted me with a comment that caught me off guard. She said her depression could be cured faster if her husband understood what she really wanted in life. Her mother asked what she meant, and Sarah openly declared in front of her entire family that I was the reason her life was so miserable. Everyone stopped eating and stared at her in confusion. We could all see she was drunk by now. Sarah went on to say that I had refused to give her what she wanted and that I was nothing but a conservative, insecure, and possessive husband who was making her feel suffocated. I could hardly believe what I was hearing, how she was twisting the narrative and putting the blame solely on me. Her sister, who I'm close with, immediately asked why she was talking about me this way and looked furious. The rest of her family sat in stunned silence, clearly shocked by her harsh accusations. I felt humiliated and betrayed, listening to her claim that all she wanted was a small thing from me, but I refused out of stubbornness. Hearing this, I snapped. The way she was painting me as the villain in front of her family was so hurtful. I turned to Sarah and demanded to know why she wasn't being honest with her family and telling them the whole truth about what she wanted from me. I looked at her family and, with all the frustration and pain I'd been holding in, told them exactly what Sarah had asked of me, how she wanted to explore other relationships, basically sleep around with strangers, while I stayed loyal to her, how she expected me to continue being a supportive husband while she enjoyed her life unburdened. I laid it all out, revealing the truth she had been hiding. Her family was stunned. Her mother asked Sarah if this was really what she was asking of me. Her father, who had always been kind to me, scolded her for being ridiculous and asked if she had truly lost her mind. Sarah, however, kept trying to justify herself. She insisted that every marriage goes through a stalemate and believed her proposed solution would help solve our issues. She argued that this was only temporary, and that I should feel lucky she was even asking for permission when so many women simply cheat on their husbands without anyone finding out. I yelled at her, telling her I was sick of her justifying her sick excuses and selfish behavior. It was a breaking point for me. I announced in front of everyone that I was done with her. I couldn't keep fighting for a marriage she no longer valued. I told her flat out that our marriage was over and that I would be sending her the divorce papers. Her face looked dumbfounded, like she couldn't believe what was happening. She blinked slowly and stared at me. I handed her my lawyer's card and told her I would be moving out that very day if she wanted to talk about the divorce. She could contact my lawyer. Her parents, understandably concerned, tried to console me, suggesting that Sarah was probably acting this way because of her medication and didn't know what she was saying or doing. They seemed to be looking for a way to excuse her behavior, explaining it as a temporary lapse caused by her depression and drinking. But I told them their daughter was nothing but a loser who had been dragging me down for the past several months with her talk of depression and grief. There was no more waiting, no more hoping things would change. I had given everything I could to this relationship when she had only disrespected me time and again. This time, I was putting myself first. Sarah tried to argue meekly that I couldn't just walk out of our marriage over something as silly as this and that we needed to go back to counseling to work things out. I laughed bitterly at her suggestion, shaking my head. I told her she absolutely needed a counselor, but I didn't. I wasn't crazy or unwell like her. I wasn't the one making reckless, selfish demands or blaming my partner for my own poor choices. I made it clear that I wasn't going to waste any more time trying to fix a marriage I no longer wanted to fix. Without saying another word, I walked out of her sister's house and headed straight to our home, where I began packing. By the time Sarah got home in an Uber, frantically calling my name, I was already ready to leave. She immediately tried the same old begging tactic, pleading with me and insisting we could work through this hiccup in our marriage. She even tried to hold on to my luggage to prevent me from walking out. I informed her that if she stopped me from leaving, I would call 911 and make our divorce process even more difficult for her. I asked her firmly not to stop me from taking my things, and begrudgingly she let me go. I quickly packed up my stuff and left to stay at a motel. Since that day I've been living out of a motel. Sarah has been sending me multiple voicemails. One moment she accuses me of being heartless, saying I'm ruining everything. The next, she's apologizing for her behavior and expressing how sorry she is for what she's done. It's been a constant emotional roller coaster, and it's clear to me now that she's trying to manipulate the situation, playing on my emotions to get me to reconsider. But at this point, I'm not giving in. Her words don't change the fact that I made a decision based on the person she's become, and I'm not going back to the way things were. I've heard enough excuses and false promises. I need to focus on moving forward and healing from everything that's happened. To clear up any confusion once and for all, I'm not leaving my ex because of her depression. I have a huge amount of respect for people going through mental health conditions. Depression is a serious struggle, and I don't want to minimize it. However, when it comes to my relationship with my ex, I'm exhausted because of her lack of accountability. She has constantly used her depression as an excuse to demand whatever she wants from me. This isn't fair. I've given more than enough of myself to try to help her, but there comes a point where no single person can carry all this weight alone. Since leaving her, I've felt much better. I've been able to focus on myself, and being away from her has lessened my anxiety. It's heartbreaking to end my marriage, but I have to walk away from my own mental and emotional health. It's been 5 months. I didn't update earlier because nothing was finalized until this month. Sarah and I are officially divorced, and I can finally say I'm a free man. We split the proceeds from the sale of our house equally. Thankfully, we didn't have any major liabilities or children, so there were no alimony payments involved. This day didn't come easily. There were countless moments when Sarah and her family tried everything they could to change my mind, to convince me to stay and believe that things could somehow go back to normal. Her mother, for example, came to see me several times after I moved out. She was on her daughter's side during the divorce proceedings and constantly tried to guilt me into staying with Sarah. She kept saying that Sarah needed a supportive partner like me, and that it was my duty to stay because of our marriage vows. At first I tried to be polite and reason with her, but as she kept coming back, I became more frustrated with her approach. Finally, during one of her visits, I decided to be honest. I told her that Sarah had once slapped me in anger, and that I should have left her long before then. I asked her if her own husband had ever done that, would she have stayed? I told her that, despite everything, I had stayed even though Sarah didn't deserve my forgiveness. She was completely shocked by what I said, and after that, she never bothered me again. During the divorce proceedings, I noticed that Sarah has gone even deeper into her depression, and honestly, she looks worse than she did before. I hope her family gets her the right help. Sarah's sister is the only one who believes I did the right thing by leaving her. She and I have continued to remain friends. Currently, I've finally moved into a place of my own. As a newly divorced man, it feels so liberating to be free of my ex. I'm proud of myself for trusting my instincts and choosing to leave a toxic relationship before things could have spiraled further. Now, I wake up when I want, with no one to answer to. I can focus on my career without distractions, and I'm able to spend time with my coworkers and friends guilt-free. I come and go as I please, and it's a feeling I haven't had in a long time. For the first time in a while, I feel like I'm truly living for myself again, without the weight of someone else's sadness and demands dragging me down. And that, for me, is worth everything.